Welcome to the Inspiring Leadership Podcast, where we seek to elevate your leadership and transform your workplace. My name is Dominic Siow. I'm delighted to be the host of this show. With my team at EQStrategist, we seek to bring you a dose of healthy inspiration and practical insights into how to enhance team performance, cultivate resilience, foster collaboration, and shape culture. One of the key traits that makes one a leader is the ability to lead change, and bringing people along in the journey of change is one of the hardest challenges of anyone in a management role. If you are a change manager, a change facilitator, a change sponsor of some sort, or just a manager who's looking to bring your people along in the journey of change, you are in for a treat. My next guest is the wonderful Chong Peng, someone who's had an extraordinary 30-year career in the semiconductor industry. And you will hear firsthand from someone who had a very operational role, who subsequently made the effective change to leading change. And leading change in one particular area that is probably the most challenging element in every organization, leading changes in mindset and culture. We cover a wide range of topics that are salient to a change facilitator. How do you overcome resistance? How do you bring people along in the change? How do you incorporate storytelling to bring out the very best in others? And what gives him the greatest satisfaction in his journey of change? Please enjoy this wonderful episode, learning from the great wisdom of Chong Peng. Thanks once again for agreeing to be part of our podcast, where we seek to inspire people with to be the finest leaders they can become.
Yep.
And in our 19 years journey in facilitating culture journeys and building high EQ leaders across so many countries now, you're one of the finest leaders I've met. When you shared with me, when I heard near Christmas that you have decided to move on to that next phase of your life, 30 years with this amazing place called Global Foundries. I couldn't help but feel emotional, sharing that journey with you. And I thought I must reach out and have the world benefit from your wisdom in leading change. Change isn't the easiest, and culture change is one of the hardest things. And there are many practitioners out there who practice by the book. You are one of those who have had tremendous track record in creating profound change just through your heart and your application of those principles. So, firstly, tell me, how does it feel, man?
Yeah. Well, firstly, Dom, thanks for inviting me. It's an honor and certainly a pleasure to be here with you, sharing about the topic that I'm very passionate about, which is leading change. And you mentioned 30 years, right? When I joined the semiconductor industry, it was just starting up. I remember when I joined the company, I was issued a pager. One of those things that you get paged and you get a number. You have to find a phone and you dial back, and that's how we started working as an engineer with a pager.
Oh my!
And I remember you can't. There was email, but there was mostly text. You can't send documents, attachment over the email. You had to look for a fax machine.
Wow!
And fax the manual over the air. Today, you look at where we are. Your cell phone, right? Your smartphone can literally do everything, right? From not just receiving messages, calling people back physically with the phone, and as well as sending emails with attachments. And now we're at the verge of going to the next phase of growth, right? Which is AI, which is really exciting as well.
Wow.
I think the semiconductor industry actually led the way in terms of the pace of change. Just as a example, right? Today's CPU chip that's made with the 3 nanometer technology. If you were to use the technology from the 60s to manufacture this chip, that chip will be the size of more than a football field.
Really?
That's how much pace of change has occurred. So I think in the process of observing these changes, I had the pleasure of and honor also of being involved in implementing some of these cultural changes and transformations in the company. And I'm glad I had the opportunity that when you invited me to share some of these experiences, hopefully change leaders will also benefit from these sharing.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Hao. Yeah, change is the hardest thing. And, just from what you've described, clearly changing the hardware, we speak about the hardware, right? Changing the software, the SOPs, the standard operating procedures and all that. So important. And yet you work on what, in my humble opinion, is the hardest part about change. Changing the operating system, the hardware, if you like, of the people to bring them along in the journey. How, share with me, in the context of change and the semiconductor industry is just a relentless pace of change. So cyclical in nature. You know, the ups and downs, times when it's absolutely boom times where I hear that you guys sometimes get amazing bonuses like 9 months, 12 months bonuses. And then there are times when you go through periods where you have to even restructure and maybe even let people go. And that must be so difficult to create an environment where people stay empowered. Maybe you can share with the audience what in your mind, why is culture so important?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Dom, just some statistics, right? There have been research being done on many companies that go through transformations, and the stats doesn't speak very well, because more than 50% of the changes are not successful, or even when they are carried out, it doesn't reach the level that they intended to.
Right.
So I think this, especially in terms of culture and changing the company's culture, and involves not just the mind but the heart of people. Is not easy. So I think through some experiences I've had in global foundries, I've observed some of these and successfully also implemented some of these interventions. We partner on some of the projects as well, which I can share more. Yeah, but certainly the nature of the business is pretty challenging. Today, the revenue for the semiconductor industry is about 600 billion.
Wow.
And it took us 50 plus years to get to 600 billion. But by the end of this decade, in a short 4-5 years, we're going to reach 1 trillion. So imagine the pace of growth, mainly driven by AI, as you know, and also many of the mega trends that we hear about today.
Yes.
And that's also driving the change, right?
Wow.
But of course, as challenging as the industry is, I think the resiliency, in the people and the organization is prepared for these changes. Yeah.
Wonderful. You speak about resilience. It's a topic that we are very near and dear to our heart.
Yeah.
How? And I feel like we're jumping ahead of ourselves a little bit. I get so excited about learning from you about the journey of change. I think the audience would really benefit about learning behind the human being behind the mic. How would you mind sharing with the wonderful audience that we have today a little bit about your backstory? Who's How Chong Peng? Beyond the authority in change, and also the chief of staff at Global Foundries. Who's How Chong Peng?
Father of 3, I have 2 boys and a daughter, a lovely wife. So happily married for just celebrated our 25th anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah, I like to run. I'm a runner. So if I have the free time and I would like to spend some time on my own, out on the trails and climbing Bukit Timah Hill, that's my passion. Yeah. Of course, I think even with work and beyond work, right, it's really about connecting with people. I'm passionate about seeing how I can help with people with their needs, especially when in Global Foundries, my role as chief of staff, I interface with a lot of people, and seeing how I can help them with their problems and link them up with people.
Right.
Basically that.
Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
How, when as part of my grieving process, when I heard that you were leaving Global Foundries, you know that when we learn about change, we talk about so important to celebrate endings. I reached out to the amazing Casey Ang, your former boss, right? Who until fairly recently was the head of worldwide operations, I believe, at Global Foundries, and you were his chief of staff, and then of course chief of staff to Yu Kong, the wonderful leader of the Singaporean site, and I reached out to Casey to express my gratitude to him as well, and for the journey that we've shared together. And he couldn't help but send me a little note of a letter that he wrote about you. for you and sent to you. I know you're a very modest person. I hope you don't mind me sharing this with a wonderful audience. And when I read this, I thought, wow, what an amazing way to move to a next phase of your life. This is what he sent me, a note that he sent to you from the wonderful Casey Ang. Dear Hao Chong Peng, I wanted to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude for your incredible contributions during your time as my Chief of Staff since 2012. To me, you are also a friend. Your honesty and helpfulness have been invaluable, and your unwavering support has been a cornerstone of our success. Together, we strategize and transform our Singapore site's working culture from management by fear to management by facts. Our countless hours spent devising strategies to change the environment have borne fruit, thanks to your dedication and insight. Your ability to discuss, provide opinions, participate in our regular communication sessions was instrumental in our progress. I'm particularly grateful for your annual efforts to summarize our success stories and challenges, compiling them into presentation decks that inspired and motivated our team. Your skill in creating easy-to-understand visuals made a significant impact. Your involvement in external communication, support roles with SSIA, SEMI, government visits, and more showcase your calmness and patience. You handle everything with grace, making my job so much easier. As you embark on your new role, I wish you nothing but the best. May you stay healthy and happy and continue to excel in all your endeavors. Please keep in touch, remain close to the exciting semiconductor industry. Thank you once again for everything, Chong Peng. When I read that, I couldn't help but have tears rolling down my cheeks. How did you feel when you received that letter from the wonderful Casey?
Yeah, very moved. Very moved. You see from actions the heart of a leader, and I think that's and I think I was glad that as his chief of staff, I hope that I've done him proud. Be able to capture that heart that he has for the people, and just as sharing, you mentioned about the year end. When we close the year, we like to start the year off summarizing our achievements and also kind of like giving looking into the year in terms of planning and further out in terms of the vision for the site and so on. Mm-hmm. And I remember, we like to show a lot of numbers, facts and so on. And one of the things I helped him do was we always summarize what's ahead of us, through a story or a picture. And I remember when we started, and it's also cyclical nature of the industry, right? So I remember back then in, I think it was end of 2014, I think the year was pretty challenging moving ahead, right? And he wanted to kind of like, Casey wanted to kind of send a message to people to say, hey, we got to buckle up, let's huddle together as a team and weather the storm together. And it's like the storm is coming.
Right.
So what I did was I chose a picture for him. I'm just going to show it to you. I think we probably can pull it up in a video, but this is how the picture looked like. It was a sailboat, and the weather was starting to turn stormy, and the message was telling people that we got to huddle together as a team, and weather the storm together.
Wow!
So the funny thing was, Casey says, "Well, I'm not sure whether the boat is going to make it through because it looks like it's going to sink."
Wow!
But anyway, as a team, we did huddle together, and we made it through. And I think through that experience of going through the trials together, I think the teamwork was much better even after that. So the following year,
Yes.
when I had the chance to choose another picture, here's what I shared. Okay, it's one of those boats that they use, sailboats that they use for America's Cup, right?
Wow!
These sailboats thrive in stormy weather, rough seas, right? But what is important is if you look at the picture, it's actually the team. The team on board the ship is not fearful of the storm. In fact, they thrive in the storm, and rough seas, right? And I think that kind of spoke volumes about the teamwork that's evolved in that year. Yeah. So it's one of the things that it's about storytelling. It's about using stories and even pictures like that and sharing the heart of the leader, with the team members. Yeah.
Beautiful. That is, as they always say, leaders are influencers, and when you design change, the hardest part about change is bring people along in the journey. And you seem like such a natural storyteller. How? I know that image that you showed earlier of that rickety sheep, battered and beaten in the storm. That was probably also a reflection of reality. We talk about change and confronting the brutal facts and where we are today, and yet painting that picture of an exciting future state of possibilities, and through the use of storytelling. Tell me how. Were you always a natural storyteller? Share with the audience a little bit about your career journey, because we work with a lot of change leaders around the world, and they have this methodology and all that kind of stuff. But you are one of those finest storytellers.
Yeah.
How did you come into that?
Well, I think growing up, I just like watching movies.
Okay.
So like the drama part of it, and so on. So I did a bit of drama back in junior college, but that was kind of like interest, right? I never thought that you could use some of this skill set in your work, until where I had a chance to work with you in some of the transformations, and I realized that it is important, right, for leaders to be able to tell stories. Right? In fact, name all the famous leaders in the world, right, that we look to for inspiration. All of them are very good storytellers.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think it's a skill set that I probably had it in the earlier days, but never fully make use of it. Until I see the the importance of that. And also as a role model, right, and you helping to develop the skill and use of storytelling. Yeah,
Absolutely wonderful. How in your journey in leading culture journeys, right, which is one of the hardest changes to make in an organization, what would you say are the 3 ingredients from your so many years now of leading change? What would you say are 3 ingredients that makes for successful change?
Yeah. Well, I think the first one is really about leadership management.
Okay.
I'm talking about management and leadership at the very top.
Okay.
I think the leadership team needs to firstly recognize and have the sense of urgency,
right,
for the change that's needed.
Right.
They got to realize that if we what is a competition doing, what's pivoting the industry, right?
Right.
That's making the change almost inevitable. I think that sense of urgency is important, and the management team, when recognizing it, the management has to come together as a team to have the willpower to want to implement change. Yeah.
Right.
I will refer to your book, right? You have many examples of some of these changes that were pending, and many of the companies, brand names that we know of, right, that did not recognize the need for change, and they are gone, right? Kodak, for example, right? They were number 1 in film, and they were also famously the inventor of the digital camera,
Right.
but they did not recognize the threat of digital photography and see that as why should we have put resources to developing something or promoting something that's going to take away business from our traditional film business, right? So in doing so, they did not have the urgency or recognize the urgency to want to change, and today they are just a big player, right?
Yes.
In the digital photography realm. You've also have the other side of the spectrum, where leadership successfully recognize the urgency for change. Right? Take Steve Jobs, for example.
Right.
I have his biography here. Right. When he came back into Apple, the second coming, one of the very successful things he did was actually the iPod. Right.
Right.
So 2004, I think he introduced the iPod, changed the music industry, and in the first year he sold like 5 million iPods. In the second year, he quadrupled that number to 20 million. Wow. Right. But if you read his biography, he couldn't sleep at night, because he knows that there is a threat, right? That someone is going to develop an app and put it into a phone. At that time, the smartphones aren't what they are today, but he sees the threat of the iPod being an app on the phone, and it can easily replace the iPod. So because of that, he actually convinced the board and his leadership team to say, hey, I think we need to lead the company to develop the phone. So as you know, the history is already documented that, they launched iPhone in 2007.
Yes.
And today they sell 50 million phones. In the first quarter, they launched a new iPhone.
Right.
And the iPod, recently they just retired the whole entire line of the iPod.
Wow.
So that's really the management focus and also the urgency for change, I think is the first key point.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And I will always be grateful to you, Hao, because I still remember when we were journeying together and you excitedly sending me that email. Hey, Dom, look at these 8 steps of leading change by the wonderful John Connor. Yeah. And the first step is creating that sense of urgency. Yeah. And maybe you can share with our audience, the sense of urgency. Yeah. What does that really mean for people? I know that Steve Jobs story was great. Yeah. How do you create a sense of urgency? Because I know that some of the audience who are wonderful change facilitators, they'll be saying, many of our senior leaders or managers, they are jaded. They are struggling with change fatigue. Why another change? How do you deal with that? What advice would you give them?
Well, firstly, I think the storytelling part is important. So what we shared about Kodak, what we shared about Apple, I think these are stories that leaders should leverage on, to bring about getting other leaders to be able to see if we don't change, some of the lessons learned through history is important.
Right.
I think as a company, if you do see the urgency of change, I think it's important to recognize that if we do not do anything, what's going to happen to us?
Right.
What the competition is going to happen to us?
Right.
And how we can be overtaken by a competition because of change in technology.
Right.
Because of change in market situation, because of the needs of the people changing.
Yes.
So I think that's the key thing in creating a sense of urgency.
Great. So what I'm hearing is that creating a sense of urgency is laying down the facts, the brutal facts of where we are, which is not necessarily bad. It is what it is. And yet sharing through storytelling, what are the consequences of not changing? Right? Or if our competitors do something and we're slow. And yet also painting that picture of possibilities, you shared that vision of where we're headed, right? The inspiring future of what if we do change? What's the benefit? Right? And then exciting people about that. Thank you. So creating a sense of urgency, one, especially amongst the management and leadership. What would you say would be another key essential ingredients for effective change?
I think the second step that's important is probably communication and over communicating whenever possible about what the change is about. You don't share about what we need to change. One time put it on a poster and you forget about it. It's really communicating at every possible juncture or opportunity about what the change means to the organization.
Wonderful. Quite apart from storytelling, how and you talk about communicating the vision for the change and why we're changing and repeating that. What else do you feel? What other tips or strategies can you give the wonderful change leaders out there about how to facilitate this regular communication and make it really effective?
Well, firstly, maybe just kind of rewind a bit and just add something to communication. I think the communication needs to be at different levels. So, for example, in Global Foundries, when we communicated the change for a change in quality mindset, we actually reached down to different levels of employees, from management to engineers, all the way down to operators that handle the wafers in the line. And I think it's important for them to help them contextualize what does change look like for each of them. So if you're an engineer, you're looking at equipment, how should you be looking at quality differently? When you go and talk to the operators, I think you got to contextualize quality in what they do better. So I think the communication has to be tailored to each different levels of employees. I think that's important as well.
How in the context of communicating and getting everyone along in the journey of change, right? You say that it's so important to start from the top, but get all the way to the ground and get everyone to buy in. Can you share with the audience an anecdote of a situation where you've encountered resistance in any of those levels, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah. Well, Dom, as you know, when we implement change, right, people are people, right? You're not going to get 100% buy-in from everyone in the organization.
Yes.
Right. As a bell curve, there's going to be like 5-10% of the people that from the get-go, they are already on board with the change. They're fully with you. They will support the change and so on. There's going to be people in the middle ground sitting on the fence, literally, that's not going to judge you, but they're not going to be verbally supportive as well. They're going to see how things pan out before they support it. And there's going to be the tail end of the people that no matter what you do, they're going to be the skeptics. So you're going to get resistance from this group of people, right? And you're also going to get resistance from the people in the middle where when things don't go well, they're going to, have doubts or cast questions, So, for example, when I launched Peace, the program for quality mindset change, right? Back when we first started working together 17 years ago, that there were a lot of skeptics, So when, and as the saying goes, right, a lot of times things don't get worse before they get better. And when we launched the Peace program to change the mindset for quality, there were initially some successes, but of course, then things started to become worse as well.
Yes.
And that's when you're going to hear a lot of skeptics come in and say, hey, it's not going to work, give it up, get back to your day job and so on. Yeah. So I think it's that challenge, of dealing with people,
yes,
and so on. Yeah.
And what's the strategy you would use to overcome the skepticism? So you know where your old island is, if you like. You're clear about where you want to get to, and what you're sharing is that the ship is sailing, and yet it seems like you're taking 2 steps back and maybe sometimes even 3 steps backwards.
Yeah.
And everyone is focused on all the negativity of how this change was a crazy idea in the first place. Yeah. And see, I told you so, this ain't working, and quality is going backwards. Right. How did you deal with that?
Well, I think first is we got to celebrate the successes. Even the small wins, right? Remember the 5-10% of people who are already on board with the change, right? Make them champions of the change, right? We got to bring up stories of success from this group of people and make them your champions, So when we launch a program, we also leverage on some of these success story and get some of these engineers or operators to come and share their story. Wow. You and I worked on some of these change stories, and we were able to share a lot of these success story. And when we launch it across the fabs, and when we first initiated it in the other fab, I think some of these success story actually helped to turn the mindset of the management to support it as well. So I think success story is very important.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you. So it sounds like when you're communicating and you talk about the importance of regular communication, it's not just about communicating the vision and creating a sense of urgency and reminding them in new and novel ways, and yet continuing to focus on and celebrating the wins.
That's right. Yeah.
Through storytelling of wins is such an important part of a toolkit of an effective change manager, it sounds like. Yeah. Absolutely fantastic. Because I think it's just normal, especially, and I think as humans, we in general, the brain, left brain especially, is focused on survival and problem-solving mode. Yeah. And it will tend to problem-solving mode, especially in the semiconductor industry, is looking for things that could trip us up. It's always wearing the black hat, if you like. What could go wrong? And ironically, in times of change where to get from A to B is very messy in the middle.
Yeah.
The brain can naturally switch on to C, ain't working. And yet you are saying that it's such an important trait of a change leader to find the gems and balance the ledger to share about how it's really working. It takes me to my experience. COVID was so difficult in Australia, very difficult in Singapore, to worldwide, really. And I still remember the Australian government at that time had decided that, well, we're going through this path of lockdowns and vaccinations. And they actually proposed we were going to get AstraZeneca as the vaccine for the rollout. And that was their path. And yet I still remember the early days when everyone was like, really having this fear, and yet very early on in the piece, that whole thing about AstraZeneca being the strategy and bringing it from Europe, I think, or maybe it was Pfizer, I can't remember now. All of a sudden, our European friends were not very keen to share that. And it was really a huge bump in the road. Like, how do you sell this? And in fact, when AstraZeneca was rolled out to people of my vintage age group, and you imagine having one or two stories of people who developed that blood clot, and it really took that initiative of change quite a few steps back. But I still remember them avidly continuing to sell the success stories, to empathize and all of that stuff. That is such an important role of a change leader in devising the communication, right? So that people can stay the course, maintain that sense of urgency and keep moving forward. Absolutely wonderful. So I think we've covered two things. You said sense of urgency, leadership buy-in, the effective communication to bring everyone in the journey, incorporating powerful storytelling. What would you say would be a third key ingredient for effective change? How?
Well, maybe before we get to the third point, I can share a story about COVID as well, because when we were going through COVID and we were we had this choice of vaccination as well. One of the things we did for the site, right, was getting leaders, right, starting with leaders, right, to pose with, we created this shield that says unvaccinated, So we had them post the pictures on our company website, and also everyone that gets vaccinated, they can go to HR, they collect a gift, and they post with the picture and they post it on the website. And kind of like that actually kind of helped the mindset of people. Hey, I need to be vaccinated as well. So leadership sharing, showing, taking the lead to show that vaccination is needed to get the site to where they need to be, and also getting the support for the people. We achieve a very high rate of vaccination very early on.
Wow.
Due to that. Yeah.
Well done, Hao. That is awesome. I know that you shared a little anecdote. It might seem like such a small deal, but think about the mindset, right? And the leadership that you provided. Number one, you recognize that people don't do what the leaders say, they do what they do. So you realize that. And number two, you initiated and prioritized the communication around it, because imagine if the leaders had taken the vaccine, but no one knew about it. So that communication, right? The communication is so important. And yet, it's just like, it seems like such a subconscious, natural gift that you have. And that communication, I can only imagine, would have made such a massive difference to global foundries during that period. So the role of change leaders, absolutely fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Thank you for sharing that. It's inspiring. Share with me, what's the third? What would you say is the third attribute?
I think the third attribute to me is very important, but a lot of times overlooked. It's really about empowering people to act on the change.
Right. Tell us more about that. What does empowering mean?
Well, maybe I'll give you an example, right? And when we launched the Peace Program, and we talked to all levels of employees about what can you do, right, to improve the quality, to prevent quality excursions from happening.
Right.
We created this portal where people can submit, nominations for awards of what they've done well. Recognizing people, the success story part. But we're also getting feedback from the operators to say, hey, management wants us to act on quality, having the right mindset, but we don't have the tools. Right? We don't have good quality wafers to do setups for the machines.
Right.
And we're struggling here. So this is where the empowerment part comes in, right? Empower people to act on the change. You got to provide people with the tools, right, and remove obstacles for them to act on the change.
Right.
The other example I can think of is, when we wanted people to act on identifying weaknesses in the system or finding errors, that may cause quality excursions. One of the things that we didn't realize was that when we encourage people to highlight errors, the errors could be caused by humans.
Right.
It could be caused by their colleagues across the aisle. And one of the things that we got feedback was people say, I don't feel comfortable highlighting these issues because I will get my colleagues across the aisle into trouble.
Right.
And they were very hesitant to act on the change.
Right.
So when we realized that, the Fab GM, who was my boss at the time, realized this problem to say, how can we get people to act on the change?
Wow.
But we had to remove the obstacle. In fact, we had a moratorium period, right, to say, hey, during this period, we want you to highlight the errors made, but we will not punish the people for making the errors. And that kind of helped people to act on the change, by removing the obstacles that prevent them from doing so. Yeah.
So amazing. Thank you for sharing that anecdote, Hao. I think it's so key. So what I'm hearing from you is it's a wonderful reminder when we talk about the importance of communication. It's a two-way street. It's not just about sharing stories and sharing. It's not like telling as much as it is also about listening, going to the ground, listening, giving the team the benefit of the doubt. I still remember this wonderful quote. I can't remember who it was, but it says, people generally don't resist change. They just resist being changed. Right? If they don't understand why, and if they don't feel like they're understood, I want to change, but there are so many things you're putting in the way, right? But I think that you've reminded us of the importance of leaders having that empathy, going to the ground, if things aren't working, to say, why? Tell me more. What's getting in the way? What can I do to take ownership of breaking through those barriers? I think that's such a critical trait and one of the key ingredients of your wonderful success.
I will just add this, as a change agent, leading change or transformations, you're gonna get a lot of feedback. You're gonna get a lot of people telling you what's working, what's not working, what needs to be fixed before change can happen. And I think that as a change leader, you got to take those actions. You got to take those feedback and take action. I think that's important. Not just hearing and receiving the feedback,
right?
But working with the stakeholders to say, what do we need to do differently? As the example that I gave, that we need to have a moratorium period where we don't punish the people for making mistakes, but at the same time, what else needs to be changed? And so that the masses, remember we talk about the middle ground and the people who are skeptics, right? They're going to watch and see, is management or the leadership serious about the change? Are we really doing something different that will empower the people to change?
Yes.
And I think when we implemented that quality mindset program, I think we were very successful in doing so because we listened to the people and we acted on feedback to empower people to act on the change. I think that's very important.
That is so beautiful. How I don't know whether I shared this with you, but in Australia, when they did the vaccine rollout, and it was going really good, and then we had was like 3 steps forward, and the one of the situations where it was a 1 step backward was one particular area, region in Sydney that just went into, lockdown again. And it would have been so easy for the government of the day to say, what's wrong with those people? They're anti-vaxxers or something like that. But the change leadership, I think, in that situation did an amazing job. It's just a most fascinating observer for me because you know how passionate I am about leading change. And there was an amazing case study of the power of change management and change leadership in action. Because they actually went to the ground and say, why aren't you, we've empowered you, we've set up all these stations where you can go and get a jab. Why aren't you doing it? And giving them the benefit of the doubt, not in a critical way, but genuinely to understand them. And they realized that in this particular area, the feedback was that, I'm going to have to take a train to go all the way to this home bush, which was the Olympic Stadium, to get this jab. I'm fearful about getting into the train. I want to get the jab, but you're making me go so far. And it was fascinating that even with the right strategy in place and they're executing it, the change leadership team was listening to feedback and have the humility, and they really changed the strategy of, what if I could get the friendly chemist up the road to dispense the vaccination for you? Would you be willing to take it? And they said, of course, 100 meters up the road, I would get that. And clearly now you have this change leadership team who have to get the buy-in of the chemists who may not be equipped, right, to do this. But that was another classic example of breaking down barriers, not saying that, hey, we've launched the change, we told you about the vision, go for it. That's not enough, right? Constantly just going out there and checking on the strategies. And I think the anecdote you've shared about the peace journey, just such a beautiful example of that. But how, I can only imagine as the change leader, you doing this and driving this. And when you talk about hearing the feedback from the people, this ain't working, these other things are getting in the way, it must be for a life of a change leader, it can get pretty draining because we all want affirmation as well, that things are working, the strategy I've put together, the communication is working, and yet sometimes it can feel so, it can get easily deflating when all you see is negativity coming in. How do you stay positive? How?
Well, firstly, you know what, you hit on a key point here, right? I think being a change leader, you got to have the R word, resiliency. You know, and I think it's very important because you like you said, you're gonna have to celebrate success, to highlight wins. At the same time, you're gonna get feedback on problems that needs to be overcome, and also skeptics feeding back to you to say, hey, what's not working? So I think the resiliency of a change leader is very important. I think for me, you know, when I went through leading change in some of those situations, I think it's really finding time to, you know, to put things into perspective,
right?
And watch a movie sometimes, you know, inspiration movie, you know, like I think that helps, you know,
right?
And what you know, in the avenue of storytelling as well, I will go into history to look at some of the things that needed change and was successfully implemented.
Right.
You know, so I think look for inspiration of people and success stories of how change leaders have managed to make that breakthrough.
Yes.
Perhaps even in some of the transformation changes that's even more difficult than what you're facing.
Absolutely. Because thank you for reminding us, I think, the importance of resiliency, and clearly you have some wonderful strategies in place. And I think just from observation as well, one of the things that, apart from your natural traits and determination and wonderful resilient self-care strategies, I think one of the things that always stood out was the amount of trust your leader had of you, and support, and providing that recognition in times when you were feeling down. I think it just speaks volumes of the trust and rapport they have of you, but also important for very often the change sponsors to recognize that their change leaders need to support the change facilitators, and you were leading the team of change facilitators. You know, we call them change champions at Global Foundries, but that you needed support. I was always impressed by your leadership team who organized, remember the T functions, the recognition set functions where you initiated that and you say, hey, please come and acknowledge the change facilitators. Would you attribute that as one of the critical ingredients as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think recognize, you know, celebrating successes, I think is something that we got to plan for, and create the situation where people have the chance to rejuvenate, you know, and be inspired by some of the change stories and successes, you know, before the change becomes successful. I think that's very important at the beginning.
Wonderful. It's been so enlightening how you've spoken about three key things: creating a sense of urgency, getting the leadership team buying into that, getting it all the way to the ground, communicating, right? And not just communicating, but listening and storytelling and bringing people in the journey, selling success stories, listening and breaking through barriers that get in the way, which is a critical role of the change sponsorship and the change facilitation. And it's been tremendous. I know that some of the audience will be curious because we've been making references to the peace journey.
Sure.
Perhaps you might want to share with the audience, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about that. What was that about? Why did it? And what has the result been?
So the this peace program, we came out with this peace program because at that time we recognized the urgency for change because the competitor was doing much better in terms of quality.
Okay.
So we have this index, what we call, like a major quality excursion. So when we have a problem with the equipment or the line where we end up scrapping wafers, we turn that as a quality excursion. So when we measured that number, versus our competitor, we were way off, And at that point, this was like towards the end of the 2000s, right? And at the time, there were many customers asking for manufacturing resources to produce chips for the smartphone market because it was starting to boom. And they needed assurance that, hey, you can deliver the quality. So we recognize that we are at a juncture where if we do not change and keep up with the competition, we're going to lose out on capturing some of this business. So there was always this thing about if you have a quality excursion, people will, you see some of the managers or the engineers that is dealing with a quality excursion problem. They're always shaking their head, and the heads are down, being demoralized and so on. And when you ask them, it's always like, oh, no peace when we get a quality excursion. So that kind of inspired us to say, hey, if quality excursion equals no peace, then if you want to have peace in your life and your work, right, then you got to have peace equals no excursion, eliminating excursion. So that kind of was how we came up with the word peace. And eventually when we empowered the people, we actually had the peace became an acronym. So P stands for proactiveness, E is error avoidance, A is attitude, C is compliance, and E is excellence. So we actually had a series of values attached to each of the letter for the word peace.
Right.
And that also led to us using that as values that we communicated. You remember the empowering part for people to say, hey, if you are an engineer, what does this PEAC stand for?
Right.
In terms of what you do in your daily basis, as well as the operators. What does proactiveness mean in terms of P? That you can do differently to change the quality mindset. So I think that kind of like we use that as a form of communicating as well as empowering people to act on the vision.
I know you facilitated so many changes, positive changes at Global Foundries in the last 20 years, but peace was always particularly powerful. And when people ask me, why do you think they were so powerful? I think it was the genius, your genius as well, working with your leaders in coming up with the word peace. Because in literally one word, it was such a profound reminder of why we're doing this. Right? And not just that, it was also about selling the change, because the natural point of resistance to change often is, what's in it for me? You want me to do this? You want me to go into the portal and offer you suggestions? What's in it for me? And I think it's such a powerful recognition of the empathy of the leadership. You were one of the key people there who said, you know what? We want to do this, and yes, quality is important. Yes, business is important, and your work-life balance is also important. Your peace in coming to work is so critical.
Yeah.
And I felt that if you look back at it and the success of the change, I think that would have been one of the strokes of real genius in coming up with that.
Yeah, and one of the things that we did when we conducted workshops, and you were a big part of it, was getting people to share what does it mean for your work life and your personal life, right? When you face a quality excursion and you don't have peace in your life, right? I remember there was a lady who was in facilities manager. She came out and she shared. She said, I absolutely am all for this peace program to support it because, and she shared an example. She said that, a couple of years ago, when my kids were young, and we were so looking forward to bringing them to the zoo, and they went to the zoo, they bought tickets, and you tap into the gate, you go in with the ticket. And he said once she crossed the gate and the kids are all excited, running towards the animals and so on, and she got a call, and there was a boss telling her to say, hey, you got to stop whatever you're doing. It's a Saturday, but you need to come back because we just had a major facilities issue. And she said that at that point, her having to tell the children and seeing the disappointment on her face, right, when they say, hey, sorry, mommy has to go back to work. He said that stayed with her for a long time.
Wow.
She says, because of that, I'm going to support this to make sure that we never, no mother, no employee would have to, face their children because of no peace.
Right.
So I think it's important that, I think that we just picked the right word. I think that spoke volumes. I think it's important to be able to have a vision of that is compelling to the people, that they can identify and support it. So peace happened to be just the right word that we chose, to get get the people to rally around it.
Beautiful. Fantastic. Peace clearly has been a very instrumental part of the global journey in the last 20 years. I understand, I recently heard that, how many years ago did we initiate that journey?
2008. So this will be
2008.
17 years.
Still running today?
Still running today.
Still
yes.
running today.
Still running
Holy
today.
smoke.
Yeah.
When you look back at that, what are you proudest of?
I think unbeknownst to me at that time, I think it's, we were trying to solve a quality challenge, a quality mindset challenge. I think through the engagement, and through this rolling out this program, I think what I'm proudest most about is really giving the employees a voice.
Wow.
Because we created a channel for them to feedback, right? It was about raising awards for their fellow colleagues or themselves, but it also became a portal where people say, I don't need the reward. I just want to make things better for myself and for my fellow colleagues. Here's all the problems that we see. So it became a feedback portal that helped to engage the people all the way down to the working level people in the production line.
Right. Absolutely wonderful. How tremendous journey. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your wisdom. Now, I also happen to know that you came into this role, not necessarily by accident. You were picked to get into this role, and yet you weren't necessarily trained to be an amazing change manager. And in my books, one of the finest change leaders and facilitators I've ever come across. For people who are excited about this journey of change and want to learn to be a change facilitator or a change sponsor, what advice would you give to them? How did you make that? Well, firstly, share with the audience what was your role before you took up this change facilitationship that subsequently led to you becoming the chief of staff. What was your role before that?
Well, I was in operations, managing the one of the modules, and eventually also I pivoted to doing leading projects,
right?
Things like technology transfers and so on. So I think because I was a project manager, I was actually assigned to look at implementing this quality mindset change program. So that kind of led to me taking on and needing to develop my skill sets in change management. Yeah.
Right. Wonderful. Yeah. Because many of the stereotypical change managers, change facilitators in other organizations, if you look at their training background, they're not necessarily come from the operational role, right? Yeah. They're in communications and more the arts, right? Yeah. And maybe some specializing in change management. So you have certainly taken a different path. Yeah. And what I admire most about you is your personal ability to make that transformation, from a very operational left brain type role to someone who's got this amazing balance and who's become, in my viewpoint, not just a leader in my eyes, but I think the ultimate testimonial is a leader in the eyes of your wonderful people that you support. Yeah. Casey Ang being one of them, just one of many. Yeah. And it's been absolutely extraordinary. You making that transformation would not have been easy. Yeah. And yet I hope that you feel incredibly proud of having made that journey. Yeah. How we're almost running out of time, but I know that the audience would love to take one final bit of wisdom from you. Looking back at your last 30 years in this phase of your chapter in Global Foundries, what gives you greatest sense of satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment?
What you do, right? What if you're the chief of staff, you're the CEO, that's your job, that's your title. People have to listen to you because you're the boss, right? The who you are is you as a person, right? And I think that's important to know how do you impact people, that people know, not just respect you for the what, your position, but who you are. I think in my after having exited the company and also the industry, I get a lot of messages and people wanting to connect, I'm no longer the chief of staff, right? They don't know how to reach out to me, but
Wow.
many of them reach out to me about what I did with them, for them, as a human being, I would say, the who you are. And I think that's important, that if you do leave a legacy because of the relationships you built, and people recognize you as a person. I think that's more important.
How it's been an honor sharing the last 17 years with you. You may or may not be aware, but the peace journey was the first culture transformation journey for me. I was a newbie as well.
Yeah.
And to be able to journey with you, have your support, have your trust, have your permission to share just a little small part in that journey.
Yeah.
I look back and I've fallen in love with so many people in the journey and gotten inspired by them. It's one of the reasons why I reached out to you as well when clearly we've kept in touch all these years. But thank you. I want you to know that you've made a massive impact in my life, because subsequent to that, we've gone on and facilitated culture and leadership development journeys in many, many organizations. And your support and your belief and trust in me and my team has also been instrumental to that. Thank you.
Yeah. So Dom, before we end, I just want to thank you also as a friend and as a mentor. I really forgot to mention this, right? Where do I go to find inspiration to build resiliency? One of the things is to call the helpline and get Dom to help. So I think that's been a privilege. I think I grew through working with you, seeing you in action and getting inspiration from you through your stories of resiliency as well. So I just want to thank you also for the journey and the partnership and the friendship, over this last 17, 18 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Hal. Excited about what's next for you, but we'll use that for another podcast.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Thank you, my dear friend.
Thank you.